Hello, welcome to episode 3 of Conversations with Life. It's been delightful. I hope if you're watching this third one, you've enjoyed the other two. If you haven't, find some time, listen to us on 2 times, and you get all our great comments
2x,
with your 2x, and we sound really cool that way. Interested in the conversation. Thanks for sharing this time with us. We really do appreciate. Today we have a spicy spicy topic today, orgasmic living, and so we're gonna hear from Sochi on this beautiful topic, how to live orgasmically. And so, Sochi, tell me how.
Okay. First, we want to just deal with the word, the elephant in the room, the big O word, and what's the deal with it? And, how dare we be so bold as to have something called orgasmic living in our field. It's funny because I'll do these workshops now and then, and they usually get a lot of attention.
I wonder why.
And it's funny. Why does sex get so much attention? God, there's so much energy around it in our field, and there should be, because everything is sexual. Everything is that dance between the form and formless, that dance between polarities.
Everything is sexual, like taxes. I'm doing taxes. That's sexual.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's kind of like BDSM.
Yeah, totally.
make me pay, Daddy. Gods.
I mean, this conversation is gonna be like, how fun can we make everything?
I love it. How fun can we make everything? And that's it, right? And it's fun, and fun is that kind of edge.
Yeah.
Finding that edge.
Uh-huh.
And we talked about the tension, and so there's something about how you talk about this that even gets below that gets into this like essence of life.
Yeah.
And living at this essence, and it's almost like that. Tension is the more masculine expression of what we're talking about with ecstasis.
I like that.
And what you're talking about is almost more that feminine being aspect of it.
Yeah, it's the river. It's how do you access the river of energy that's always there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's absolutely present and absolutely essential for this experience. And it's fun because then polarity becomes a whole different game. So, our typical cultural orientation to polarity is positive and negative with judgment. So positive's good, negative's bad. Which is funny because if you look at a battery, what's the good side? What's the good side of the battery?
I don't know.
Well, the positive side, of course.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Oh, I see. Your point being that there is no good side of a battery.
Right.
Like, yes, you need this whole thing. Yes,
right.
Totally. Uh-huh.
You need the whole thing for the energy flow to be present. And that's basically what we're playing with here, is that we've been conditioned to see positive as good. Even just saying the word positive, we don't picture a plus sign, we picture like good vibes.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's this whole judgment field around it, and negative as so positive is something that we want to experience and negative is something that we don't. Which is hilarious because life doesn't give us that much of a choice. Like it's all, you gotta have all of it. So if you can orient yourself differently to that spectrum, and the way that I usually teach it is, you have the pleasure and pain spectrum. And wherever you are in this moment on that spectrum, you have access to the current or the hum of life below that is ecstatic. So right now, if I just drop in, check in with, let's say I'm checking in with my body. And I have this like pinch in my lower, one of my ribs in the back, And if I focus on that hard enough, it's orgasmic. It's fun. It's exciting. And then we get to play around in that whole like, oh, well, where's my preference? Well, I wouldn't ever be able to develop preference if we didn't have the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And what's more important to me than preference is presence.
Mm.
Because then it doesn't really matter so much if I have a pinch in my back or not. If I can just be present with it, then it's going to do what it's going to do. Mm. And I love that in the context of having a conversation with life, because we get to have a romance with this thing that's kind of out of our control.
I love the idea of a romance, because a romance is kind of an interesting, like, existential conversation. Like a romance is big. There's like, what makes something a romance is big stakes. There's a lot in it. There's a lot of meaning. There's a lot of juice in the process. And what if everything and every moment was a romance, rather than just that moment, or just whatever, trying to pass through whatever you're doing so you can get to the next thing. Or romance, you're trying to be, you want to hang out with that beloved, that lover or whatever, and everything else you do seems banal, right?
Yeah.
Rather than this continuation of experience where I'm in my romance, I'm in this game, and then that romance is celebrated with another person, in that energy.
And it really creates a totally different kind of potential for a relationship with another person. It's almost ineffable. Like, it's almost hard to describe what's possible when you are in the conversation with life, when you're focused on presence and finding, and developing a relationship with that ecstatic hum. Then you're bringing a level of fullness and awareness that's so much less about controlling the other person.
Yeah, I know this gets us back to sexuality, right? Because when you're grown up, when you're grown up sexually repressed, right? When you don't have a real great view of sex, when it's like forbidden, like I spent my whole teenagerhood afraid I was going to get AIDS from masturbating, and I was going to go to hell, right?
Right.
So when you grow up with this concept that sex is this outside thing that you should be afraid of, and then not be afraid of suddenly, and like inhabit with one other person, and somehow this is going to work, right? Like this whole kind of like gauntlet we have set up sexually for people's lives, the sexual gauntlet. Like, okay, I have sexuality, I'm gonna like dodge all these things and these horrors and get to this place where I can feel okay, and then I don't feel okay. I don't know why.
Yeah, and overnight it goes from the worst thing you can possibly do besides murder, to the most sacred thing.
Except
like,
nobody's,
wait, what?
Except nobody's told you about it, and you're freaked out, and like, holy shit, what's going on? Oh my God.
And if you're like me, like, I avoided it so carefully that I hadn't even encountered it in text until I was already engaged. I didn't actually know what the word orgasm was until I was engaged.
Right.
And I accidentally found it in a book, and I was like, well, maybe I can read this because I'm going to be married.
Right. Oh, yeah, right. No, I was 12. I was looking up, vagina in the dictionary and being like, oh, wow, this is saucy stuff, right? I mean, it's just so ridiculous how, sexually repressed we are. We just don't get that, and it's totally afraid of, and the kind of scientific, like, the classes they had, like, maturation night or whatever, is so...
It's the worst.
The worst. It's so material-based. It's so not emotionally understood. None of that emotional attunement in regard to sex. But, my point was, before we started this riff, was that we think of sex as something out here to be feared, that's out in the in the thing, and it's to be feared and hoped, and like there's this huge no middle ground there. So it's got extra energy on it, right? And it is big energy, and there's no doubt that we should hold it with care and understanding, etc. But we're never allowed to be sexual.
Yeah, it's so other focused.
Yeah, because we don't have a sexual relationship with ourselves, let alone the world, the earth,
Yeah.
the things that are. Sexuality is way more than, the act of sex or intercourse or whatever sexual act, right? It's really an energy exchange to the point of ecstasis.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a whole different thing. And you can we develop that in ourselves. Like, it seems like almost like the whole point of like young adulthood, like childhood, children are allowed to just be ecstatic.
Yeah.
Because it's seen as innocent. They're seen as innocent, and it's not okay. But then, now you have sex organs, and all of a sudden you've got to like watch your energy and careful, blah 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 blah, right? And you clamp that shit down. So to even be allowed into your own energy at all, which is my sexual energy is related very carefully to my essence. That's the way I feel it. I feel like my essential energy is there, and my sexual energy is kind of right there with it.
It's life force.
It's life force, right?
Yeah.
Within a certain intent, there's intention, there's lots of different types of energy and ideas about that, but it's certainly is at least related, very, very intimately with that life force energy. And so, that whole rigmarole is ridiculous. How are we supposed to have a sexual relationship with anybody when we haven't had one with ourselves?
Right. Yes. So so yes, have it with yourself, have it with life. We did a really beautiful exercise in one of our workshops a couple weeks ago from Conscious Connections, which is a tantric community that we do here, and we had everybody look at their hand, and just be present with their hand, and like feel the energy on the inside. How does your hand feel on the outside? How does your hand feel on the inside? It was so beautiful because it was really hard for people to be ready to move on to the next exercise.
A few people were like, wait
because they'd never enjoyed their hand so much.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because love is the most simple, it's the easiest thing in the world. And we can make it into the most complicated thing. But it is literally as easy as look at your hand. How in love with your hand can you be?
Yeah.
And you think of in love in a totally new way, because how we're trained to think of love is this person is going to answer all my problems. They're going to be the thing, to fill all of my longing, right? And that just gets exquisitely messy, right? Because nobody's ever going to be the thing.
Yeah. Well, I think in a normal life, we're supposed to go give our energy to somebody, cast our animus or anima, right? And then have that not work out, and then have a heartbreak so that we can get that. But it becomes more extreme when you're never taught to really feel and have know that energy in yourself. Yeah, to own it at the beginning. I mean, it's gonna happen anyway, in our immaturity and in our living. Heartbreak is the best thing in the world, right? It's supposed to happen. It's supposed to introduce you to yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Like that Avery Brothers line, loved ones will break your heart with or without you, right? and that's the truth, right? Like you're supposed to be introduced to that, but when you have been unattuned, when you haven't had a relationship with your own energy, when you really haven't tapped into that river down in, then you need somebody. You need them extra more. Yeah, it's good English. Good English. And you need them so much that all this pressure is on them to complete you. And then that's super rich ground for disharmony.
Yeah.
So how do you do it? That's the question. So what's your answer for how to connect to that river? How do you really find it?
Well, presence. Like I said, it's the most simple thing.
Okay, it's the most simple thing. How do you do that? The simple things are the hardest things.
Okay.
What does presence look like?
You look at your hand.
Yeah.
The other activity we did that night was to walk around the room for a minute and choose whatever object stands out to you. And somebody had, a lighter.
Mm-hmm.
Can you experience ecstasy with a lighter?
Mm-hmm.
I had a client come in for his first session, and I was like, okay, let's just go all the way down the sad road. What do you fear the most? What's the worst possible life you can imagine? And he was like, getting paralyzed from the neck down. I was like, magic wand. You did it. It's it.
There you are, paralyzed.
But, you know, and I'm like, what are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, oh, this sucks, you know? Like, I don't want to be here for very long. And I said, okay, what do you see? What do you notice in your environment? And he saw the Virginia creeper vines outside the window here. And oh, yes, just another vine. Just another leaf. You know, you see a tree, and your mind has a picture dictionary of what a tree is. Mm. And that's all that registers. Mm-hmm. Well, what if you actually looked at the tree that you're actually looking at? Mm-hmm. Totally different experience. So he's looking at these leaves, and I'm just like, stay with it. Stay with it until your wonder is opened. Mm. Until you start getting more curious. Holy fuck. What it took for that leaf to be growing outside our window at that moment, mm-hmm. and the multiverse that exists within that leaf, mm-hmm. all of a sudden he just won the game of life, mm-hmm. because he's living the absolute worst possible imaginable life, and he's experiencing wonder and ecstasy. That there's no end to the amount of wonder you can bring to a leaf. Like, you can never know it fully. Mm-hmm. And so it's that. How are you going to engage with life? And it's funny because when we think of life as the beloved, it's just trying to get us to engage. And so that's why I brought this. I didn't tell Steve why I brought this. I'm like, can we borrow one of your things? Uh-oh. And I think that, you know, I'm going to use a really extreme and probably poor example, but it's going to be fun. So this is how a lot of people are experiencing life. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They're just sort of like hanging in there. Mm. Right? Mm-hmm. And then I want you to hold right here. And we're just going to, really close. We're going to pull it as tight as we can. Until that you, like, look at this is the way the other people are living life.
Yeah. It's like, oh, she's gonna
and
break.
It's like, I gotta control this. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. And neither one you're really engaging. Mm-hmm. And one you're sort of like ignoring it, and the mm-hmm. other one you're trying to control it.
Yeah, totally.
So let's just start real slow in the middle here. And I just want you to pull. And even right there, can you feel that? Mm-hmm. There's energy there. Mm-hmm. Woo! And then just relax it. Mm-hmm. So how crazy does life have to get you to engage with it? Mm. Because this is available every second. Mm. And you can feel just that tiny tug. That's gorgeous. And then we pull it a little more. And then like in and out. So when we think of tension, hold it tight again. This is what we think of. We don't want tension. We don't want tension. It's like, just relax. Mm-hmm. Right? Just relax. And but it's something kind of in between that, like...
Yeah, it's like that, that nice, juicy
where you can feel
place.
A current of energy.
It's a really good example. And, you know, it's funny because this is fun sometimes. Mm-hmm. This is not fun. Right? This is like, oh, fuck, right?
Yeah.
But this kind of like in-between place.
Yeah. So, and that's... Seriously, we're deciding...
Beautiful to have rubber band sex with you.
Thank you. It really was. I'm just going to pause for a moment and enjoy that. But really, that's what we're doing all the time. Consciously or unconsciously. We're engaging with life. And it's just trying to get our attention. It's our beloved. Mm-hmm. And it wants that. It wants to have sex with us. It wants some of that. Enough of the tension that we can feel the current of what's happening.
Yeah, and it strikes me that feeling your hand from the inside is that little pull, right? So your hand's just sitting, you're just there, right? And then feeling into your hand, that awareness, that presence brings the tension. Like it starts to create that. And same with looking at the leaf out the window, right? Like that is the beginning. Like just noticing is a thing, mindfulness is a thing that gets you into the arena.
Yeah.
And then there's some more steps there, right? There's this attunement. There's this getting into. There's this feeling into.
Yeah.
Life, and just all life. This table of the elements up here that we keep, and it's to remind us of that Mickey Singer riff. It's like we're just a bunch of elements that just arrange themselves magically on this planet, and they're just all playing with each other, right? In this and it's all this electric game, this tension of all these different types of electrons and neutrons and things that we don't even really understand very well, all just playing in this almost improbable dance.
He's like, what are you making such a big deal about? It's just a bunch of electrons. Just a bunch of atoms.
Just a bunch of atoms doing their thing, yeah. And it's just kind of that game playing with itself, right? That's what creates matter. Is that those and the way that they're arranged differently, and in that thing, that is what life is. So it's really all this great big wonder, and we can look at that on a chart, but we are it. We're the game. we're what's happening.
Yeah, and our energy is gonna follow our consciousness. And I think where a lot of us are finding ourselves is that that's kind of been hijacked. And so there are all of these other forces clamoring for our attention because they want our energy. And that's like our resource. Our attention is the path to our greatest resource, right? And so when you're healing trauma and you're doing practices that develop your consciousness, then you get to choose. So I can sit in this room right now, more than 1,000 things to potentially give my attention to. And that's there every moment. So it's literally like, what am I going to engage with?
And then there's the relationships of everything with each other, the tension that everything holds, and the contrast, and the story, and the and then there's the whole history of those. Like there's no, you could say 1,000 things, and then there's just goes exponential from there. And when you start thinking about relationship.
Yeah, so I want to share this quote, which is fun because I heard it from Bruce Lyon in Mystery School, but I think it actually ties back to David White and one of his friends. But he said that he was talking about being overwhelmed, and we all know that. Like it just sucks. Like life feels like it's too much. There are too many things clamoring for our attention, right? And it's just overwhelming. And I think a lot of times it feels like this. And what his friend said to him was the antidote to overwhelm is not rest. Well, that sparked my mind big time, because I felt like, as a homeschooling mother of 8 at the time, the thing I chased my whole life was rest.
All the time, yeah.
And if I could just, right? That was the thing I was chasing. And so for me to hear like, wait, it's not that, huh? It gets my attention. That the antidote to overwhelm is wholeheartedness. What? What? Whatever is, be there. Be with it. Wholeheartedly. And the beautiful thing about that for me is that it actually totally healed my addiction to rest. And because it could never be satisfied, it was a fun game to chase that, right? Never could be satisfied in that. And every time I thought I was going to get a moment, the kid would need something, or I'd have to be up all night, or somebody's sick, or whatever, some emergency that I couldn't ignore. And so what I did with that was I said, okay, here's the thing. I've never rested wholeheartedly. Every time I've laid down for a nap, every time I've laid myself down in bed, I've sat there and fallen asleep thinking of all the other things I should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I never was wholehearted in my rest. So I started doing wholehearted rest.
Mm.
And then it lost that addictive quality to it.
Yeah, when you bring presence to what is happening, it moves. It allows it to move.
Uh-huh.
Right? It's not held, either place. Right?
Yeah.
It allows it to move through. Like that's, I think, any addiction, right?
Mm-hmm.
Addiction is when we don't have full access to our energy, and so we find a loop to get into that we can feel some tension in, that's manageable, right? And
or that kind of gives us the relief from this.
Yeah.
It gives us that moment
Right.
of like, ugh. So I felt like my thing with rest was this all the time, like chasing. And it would get so bad that I would finally just go flaccid.
Yeah.
And
then
say like,
whatever,
Fuck it, fine.
Yeah.
Well, that's not as fun as this.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Where I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I'll get rest and maybe I won't, but whatever's here, I want to engage with it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I can feel this affecting, as I stretch this rubber band, I can literally feel the shift in Shakti inside my body.
Mm-hmm.
The shift in that like current, that river of energy.
Mm-hmm.
Really fun. I've never done this before. I'm just going to sit here and play this. But then, yeah, like, so then how does that deal with relationship? And it's beautiful because then recently I came across another quote that's similar, but it's got that relationship element to it. And it's Anthony DeMello.
Mm-hmm.
The Way to Love. I was listening to that. And he said, everybody's so bent out of shape about being lonely. Gosh, we're all so lonely.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is there any person on the planet who is not just, like, having those moments of, like, I'm so lonely.
Mm-hmm.
There's nobody here for me.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody to show up for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so lonely. And he says the antidote to loneliness is not companionship. And it's like, yeah. Have you ever felt lonely in a crowd?
Yeah. Well, but you feel more more lonely in the crowd. Working at the client right now, and that's what she feels. She goes out into a crowd, and it's so hard because she just is, at least at home, she's supposed to be lonely there.
Yeah.
And even with friends, she feels lonely, because there's so much that's happening with her that she's having a hard time connecting.
Uh-huh.
But loneliness is a deeper invitation to one's own self.
And it's like the kind of like the rest thing. You're never going to satiate that.
And what just happened there, you notice that kind of stopped in that story. Obviously, this is switched, and the angle's a little bit different probably too, is my camera just ran out of space. So we just did this, in that second half of what we just didn't record, we just did the greatest podcast in the world.
Best.
Have you ever heard like Jack Black's greatest song in the world, right? So now what you get is a tribute to the greatest second half of a podcast in the world.
Right.
Right? Here we go.
Uh-huh.
And that's some juicy tension.
Yeah, super juicy.
We were talking about loneliness, and you were saying how it's wholeheartedness, and how that
it's the
and that cured your addiction to rest.
Okay, but then the loneliness quote was, the antidote to loneliness is not companionship, it's connection to reality.
Oh, that's what you got. Okay, so
we were talking about loneliness, and how it's not trying to find satiation for that kind of existential loneliness is not so mad.
Come on, Sarge, we're gonna do
I'm
this.
so mad. It's not sustainable.
Seriously, that was the best conversation at the end of that podcast. Anyway.
I mean, ask me about the battery again. You know, which side is good and which side is bad. And I'm just going to straight up say the negative side is bad. And I hate that just happened. I hate it so bad. Okay, and we're going to do this because this is a really cool part.
This is a cool part.
Is that, okay, when you're around someone who has that insatiable loneliness, what does it feel like? And I feel like we all know. We've all had that experience. And we've probably been on both sides of that experience.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to play with that stretchy thing again. So you go to a party and you find someone, you start talking, and you get a little hit of this.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels so good that you cling.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's say I'm the bottomless pit. Mm-hmm. What are you going to do?
Yeah, you're like, whoa.
What are you gonna do at the party?
I'm gonna be like, oh, easy up. You know? Yeah, oh.
Yeah, or maybe even let go. Did you see that? This is like sends you farther into your wound. Uh-huh. Maybe re-traumatizing you. Mm-hmm. You know, and you go home and you're just like, oh, it's true. There's something wrong with me. I'm not worthy. Mm-hmm. People don't like to be around me. And it's so confusing and so painful. Because for a second you had it. Mm-hmm. And then, right? Mm-hmm. And so one of the things about developing consciousness and presence around this and awareness is, you know, first compassion for that trauma that created so much abandonment and loneliness. And that it's really not okay for babies and little children to be left alone, to not be attuned, to be abused. Mm-hmm. So much compassion for that and the wound that it leaves. And then being able to say, okay, what am I going to do with that? And try this out. Hey, I'm noticing, you know, this is really fun. I have a friend that does this. It feels really good. Will you let me know if it starts to feel draining? Will you let me know if it feels like I'm clinging too much? Mm-hmm. So beautiful. Because what's there now is this intimacy, this consent, this opportunity for them to be seen in their trauma, in their vulnerability, and an opportunity for me to say, I'm starting to feel complete here. Do you have one last question, or is there one more thing you want to share so that we can both feel complete in this? And then there's this slow release, right? Mm-hmm. And then I get to take this home. And I know what that feels like now. I know what attunement feels like. I know what it feels like, at least a little bit, to have some satisfaction in that relationship space. And so I can play with that energy myself and start to develop that myself. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things about containers that can be really beautiful is when you set the intention. I think most of us really want to support and show up for each other. It's just hard when you're constantly feeling put upon or drained. Or vice versa. It feels terrible to be the person that's like, I'm never satisfied.
Yeah, or someone wants to hold this container to you, you know? I can't remember this is where we said it, but like, you know, being a healer is handing it back. When the person can hold it. But sometimes you got to hold this for a minute with people. Yeah. You've got to hold a lot of energy, and they're looking at you like, I'm sure you're not going to be okay with this. Yeah. I'm sure you're not going to be okay with this. My trauma is too big for people, etc. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
But because I know this is happening, I can just hold it and say, okay, what happens if we give our systems permission to release? What happens if you bring it this way? Okay, does that feel a bit better? Right? Mm-hmm. I can feel you over here, and I'm okay with that. I'm not gonna leave you. I'm not gonna let you alone. And this is a lot. And this is not gonna be a happy place for you for very long. It's not maintainable, right? So come on, now let's learn, right? Let's reorganize the system around attunement, and then eventually, here, take it, and now now you can feel alive on your own and not feel like, that needs to happen. It doesn't mean that we don't need to reach out once in a while and pull on,
right, and it's that idea of
it's more but being conscious about it helps, because I think my system was unattuned in a lot of ways, and I would show up to parties and I would be like this, right?
Totally.
And I didn't know I was doing that, and people would be like, "You're freaking me out because you're too intense," and I am pretty intense. Even now I think I have that going on, like the initial thing is like that, and I'm like, oh, sorry, okay, well, oh yeah, come here, right? Even then, I think I had trauma patterns that kind of do that. It's interesting.
So how does it feel when you're sharing something about, your past, your trauma, something that's challenging for you, and somebody says, you just need to love yourself?
Oh yeah, that's a good one, right? That's a good one. Just love yourself. And we've said it here, you need to have a relationship with yourself to have a relationship with other people. All those are true things.
Yeah.
And it's totally true that you need to love yourself, and completely like, oh, thanks.
Yeah, it's dismissive.
It's dismissive, and it's not honoring. Yeah.
Yeah. And probably the reason that people say it is because they've been in this situation where maybe somebody that's got a lot of trauma is just like, go, I need you. And at some point our system's like, I don't know how to hold this anymore. I got to take care of myself, And so it's like, it's true and not true. It's totally true that self-love is the way, and that you have to do your work yourself. And you don't have to do it alone.
Yeah, it's like, raising children. You're supposed to hold that. Children come up, and especially to hit their adolescent years, they have difficult energies. And you and I both had children that it's difficult to hold the amount of tension that they create in a home sometimes, right? Yeah. And you can be with it. You can be okay.
Yeah. I'm not going to take that personally. I know. Yeah.
And at some point you can't. You have to hand it back to them. And just okay. And sometimes they go like this. Yep. They go from super tension to being like, no, well. Right?
Yeah.
And okay, how does this feel? And then you just, hey, how does this feel? I don't feel good. Okay. So what do? How do we?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because my child in my family that's like that, just big energy, super sensitive. It'll be like that, and just like, everybody has to deal with my stuff.
Right.
My reality now has to become everyone. And then they'll go like this, either because they run out of steam, or there's a boundary set around family space, right? But then, almost always, what happens is a few hours later, they come to me. And they're like, hey, will you hold this? And we get to do this. And we get to see what's really under all that, explosive.
I'm glad we're doing this on the YouTube instead of a podcast, because this visual and tension is really good. But people who are on the podcast, we have a rubber band. We're holding it between us as we're talking about tension here.
It's one of those exercise
Yeah, it's one of those.
So it's a big rubber band.
Yeah, it's a big rubber band. It's a big elastic thing. And that makes me think about school too, right? Where kids come in and it's like, do all your stuff. And they're like, no, I don't want to do that stuff, right? And so they're either like, I'm stressed, I gotta do all the assignments, or they're like, I hate school,
not doing
right?
it. Yeah.
And like love of learning, like learning to create their own tension with this life is finding something they love, that their system naturally gets into, and then using that as an example. Once they have something they love, once a person finds a passion in life, then everything else becomes more accessible. And it doesn't mean they're going to go but once you get a kid reading, even like stupid Harry Potter books, like I like Harry Potter, but also, it's not the great literature that I want my kids to read lifelong, right? But you get a kid reading that, and then all of a sudden other things could be more accessible. Sometimes they end up in Harry Potter land. They only want to read that kind of book for a while. Okay, fine, right? But I got a great education by reading every fantasy book in the library when I was a kid, trying to find my own self. And you know, that set me up for being able to read everything. You know?
So my thing about
music,
my curiosity about depression,
mm-hmm.
which I feel like is this,
Mm-hmm.
is I'm wondering if it's a reaction, almost like a collective reaction to this place that we've gotten
Mm-hmm.
collectively that's like
Mm-hmm.
this. We are going to overcome nature and control it.
Yeah.
And we're going to build sidewalks. We're going to build stuff that's indestructible, that nature,
Yeah.
you know, and there's no room for life force there.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, like our systems are just like in this reactive, like,
Mm-hmm.
like life's going to win.
Mm-hmm.
And we've kind of had it, like we've stretched this to as far as it can. You know?
Totally.
And one of the things that you can see there is the whole concept of, you know, identity. An identity being this.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see, like, the energy's cut off.
Yeah.
So identity can actually be really denaturing.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't hold it lightly enough that you can grow into a new container. So hold this as if it's your own thing and just hold it as tight as you can. And then what's it like when those are both tight? It's like I almost can't even feel it. I almost can't even feel you. It's barely there.
Because I'm so rigid in my
because this is what's important. It
Right.
becomes about the identity.
Right. And this, or the tension that we're creating between each other, isn't it? Because there's so much tension there already.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's
so much has to.
It's like about this. It's about the identity. Yeah. It's about the institution. Mm-hmm. It's about the container.
Or about the material.
Instead of
anything
about
other than the energy in the conversation.
Growing a space for things to grow. So if you use identity as a growth container, beautiful. Because then, you know, and I did this for a while. I tried on the whole...
You can do this, yes.
The whole lesbian thing.
Mm-hmm.
For, you know, several months. I was like, maybe I've just been married to a guy because I wanted all these kids, and I had no other reference point for how to be.
For my sexuality, yeah.
And so I tried on the lesbian thing for a while. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm only attracted to women, right? Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful growth container for me. If I had done this with it, I would have been stunted, you know? Like, my life force wouldn't have actually gotten me here to where I am right now. So alive and so beautiful, and I keep doing it. I keep creating containers, and then my energy gets too big for it,
and that
then
itself is part of the conversation, rather than
thing.
Something we have to be. You know, this Bill Plotkin talks about psychoadolescence and how our first adulthood, right, is we throw it away. Like, we become an adult, we learn the skills to make ourselves, you know, available and sexually attractive, and, you know, and all the, you know, like, successfully socially, like, all that kind of thing, right? Uh-huh. It's our bad pancake. In most tribal cultures, you throw that away, and then you adopt your adult self and get truly initiated into tribe, right? Uh-huh. Into yourself, right? And there's no place for that. He calls it psychoadolescence, where we're holding on, you know, the king and queen of the prom are holding on to this identity as cool people the rest of their lives, and it's like, look how cool I am, like, you know, 20 years later, it's not so cute. And it, you know, this whole thing is just, you know, absurd. That cool kid pressure is real. Yeah. As is the pressure on the bottom of trying to not be attuned to society. Okay, pause. I'm going to check this thing because I am nervous as hell.
We don't want to go for round 3?
We're still going.
So containers can be the best thing. Yeah. Because it gives you a place for your energy to grow in, and you can feel the edges, and you can explore, and there is this sense of kind of like safety. Uh-huh. And if you get to be the energy and not the container, then when you find those edges, you get to go beyond them.
Yeah. Well, and every interaction is a container, right? Mm-hmm. Every sexual interaction is a container. People create a container together. They don't know they're doing this. And there's an energy situation that happens in there. And then the alchemy of that is what they leave with. If I need to be something in that, then I've limited myself. I've created something that isn't a good experience, and it's going to create a loop rather than be satisfying.
So
right?
just be the real man, Steve.
Yeah, or be whatever, or be a man or a woman.
I need somebody
even
to
those
be
identities, right?
Yeah.
Right. And if you're consciously playing that energy in those roles, and David Data talks a lot about this, like choosing the masculine or feminine, or choosing a particular energy to be in, play in that, right? If you're doing that kind of consciously, it's kind of interesting.
Again, because you're
in the BDSM world,
still
all
the
that.
Energy. You're not the container.
You're not the container.
You're not. I'm the masculine.
I'm the masculine. I'm
you're
the
like
thing.
I'm playing with masculine energy right now.
And addiction is that loop where we need that energy to be a thing for us, and we don't feel like we're not finding it outside of it, and so we just keep looping back into it, trying to be okay, and it gets less and less and less and less and less and less satisfying until you'll die. Right?
Yeah.
Like until you find it and you realize that's not the thing, and you let your energy out of it, live in this wholehearted way.
Okay, let's play this game.
Yeah.
What was it like the first time you tasted Fruity Pebbles?
Wee-hoo! Yeah.
Seriously, like I remember the moment because my parents didn't buy sugar cereal, so I was at my neighbor's house.
Right?
It was the best
You're
thing
like, oh my god.
ever,
yeah, right.
Okay, so I tried to try Fruity Pebbles as an adult.
And you're like, oh god, what was I thinking? Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't the Fruity Pebbles.
Yeah. Well, and so much of our childhoods are those exciting, kids are marketed way in this thing that's like so much exciting. And this whole dopamine thing, right? This is the dopamine reaction rather than the attuned, whole bevy of chemicals. So we get addicted to this big experience and without finding that attunement place,
Well, and the fun thing about dopamine is we think it's the satisfaction. It's not. It's the chase.
It's the chase, yeah.
The dopamine is the chase thing, which brings us to that word.
Yeah. What is it?
Satisfaction.
Oh, satisfaction. Yeah, satisfaction. I was thinking orgasm. But same thing, right? No, wait. Not at all. But yeah, satisfaction. And that is this, right? That is satisfaction.
Yeah, and there's a place.
Right there, yeah. It's juicy.
It's so fascinating where like my energy settles almost.
Yeah, it's like
into that flow.
Yeah.
There's like this current. I can feel it. It's juicy.
It's not so tension that you feel like that this is
I don't have
scary.
to work at it.
It's too much.
Yeah.
Right? And maybe if I worked out with this band a lot or whatever, and get really strong, that would change, right? It can hold more energy.
You can develop your capacity for energy.
Yeah. But between two people, this is pretty juicy.
You're gonna find that place where it's like really harmonious.
I think that's true. I think this kind of sexual attunement, right? Rather than polarity, it's how much of my energy I hold. If I can hold a lot of energy, I want to be with other people who can hold a lot of energy. Otherwise, they're going to be like, they're going to be feel too much, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be overwhelming for them, and I'm going to be.
And somebody's going to let go.
Yeah, right. It's not going to.
Did it hurt?
No.
Okay.
It sounded like it. It's gonna be. It's gonna be. People listening on the podcast gonna be like, "What are they doing?"
It's really terrible for both people.
Yes.
Because when you're in that place, like if you're a big energy person and you're expressing at that level, for your partner to go away like that, that's a huge drop.
Right.
And then on the other end, when the other person's expressing and you're getting overwhelmed, that's also not fun. It feels violating.
Right. Right.
So it's really beautiful to find that.
Find it, yeah. Find a juicy place.
Where's our place of harmony? Yep. And you can feel it.
We have that with every person, and there's just it's kind of like it's almost like boundary. Boundaries that finding that place of satisfaction with people, right? And sometimes that's over there.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's in a sexual situation, and sometimes it just depends. Sometimes it's I never want to see that person again in my life. Yay.
Yeah.
Now we're creating this, right?
That's our harmonious place. It's not really like our systems are far enough away that we're not really feeling it, right?
It's still attention.
We're not engaging with it all the time. Doesn't take a lot of our attention.
Well, I recently, had a situation where I was reconnecting with a friend, and they felt some pull or whatever, and they interpreted it as, this is
You
what you
want
want.
me.
Yeah, right. And it's so interesting because that wasn't. Oh, I feel tension. I feel a lot of love for them, right? But that was, their story was this, and
Oh,
so
I
they
love that
created a
you brought
boundary
that up.
on it, which is great.
Yeah. Because when people feel this,
Mm-hmm.
the only place that most of our minds have to go with it is sex.
Or a story of whatever identity story there is in there, right?
So you feel that lovely current of energy. A lot of people are like,
oh,
they're attracted to me,
right, right. Well, and this could be attraction. Attraction's fine, right? It's the thing, we're so in tune to sex that even attraction feels dangerous.
Yeah.
So I'm attracted to somebody, big fucking deal. I'm attracted to a lot of fucking people, right? Like, but we're like, I'm afraid to sense into that, and then it becomes something else.
Weird.
Weird,
The
creepy,
games come
strange. Yeah, games.
So here's what it's kind of like our story here is we're sitting next to each other at an event, and it's like,
woo,
oh,
this feels nice.
It wasn't like this where most people it's kind of fun to talk and whatever. Well, I sit down and start talking to you, and it's like, oh, there's energy here. There's energy here. Okay, so hey, I feel like we might have medicine for each other.
Like we can hold each other. Right? We can hold the energy.
Do you want to explore what that looks like? Which with you became one thing, multiple things now, right? That continues to grow and show us things. Well, with other people, I've had that exact same experience, exact same conversation, and we spent 7 hours talking. I haven't seen them since, but you know what?
And that was like
so satisfying.
It was juicy and satisfying, and that was the time.
So beautiful, yeah.
Okay, so that brings us to this idea of. And a question I asked you in the part that we lost. And what is then, so because we're talking about orgasmic living, what is an orgasm?
Yeah, and I have, at least 2 answers for you. One as a, midwife, sex educator, physiological perspective. It's an involuntary vibration or spasm in the pelvis. And then at an energetic level, it's the involuntary vibration period, which actually is already happening everywhere. So to me, in that sense, the orgasm is just bringing enough attention to something that you tap into the vibration of it.
Yeah, where you get to experience it in its fuller sense. Which if we experienced everything all at once that way, we would it would fire hose. Explode, right?
Yeah.
But most people aren't even in that because it's everywhere. They've kind of almost shut off from it, right? Rather than in tune, and that's that attraction thing. Someone feels energy, and they're making they have to tell all these stories, right? Or I'm driving down the road and I see particular something that's interesting to me, or I see a story on bowling and I read the story and it's interesting. I don't need to become a bowler, but there's infinitely interesting things about bowling. I could spend my whole life in bowling,
Totally.
and I'd be just fine.
Yeah.
Right? I tend to be more of a generalist because so many things light me up. Like there's just not enough time to explore all the things that are really cool in life, right?
Yeah.
And that's good too. Right? I don't need to go everywhere. I don't need to see anything. I don't need to see anything. Right? Because what I've learned is this is what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Not that particular thing,
so I feel
or
like
that particular person, or that particular situation, or that particular experience.
So the orgasm to me is this honing in and focus that actually allows you to dip into the essence of something.
Yes.
Which actually opens you to the essence of everything.
Yes, and that essence is ecstatic. And this idea that life is playing us. No, life is living us. Right? And so, we think that we have children, for instance, and, often orgasm for a man equals ejaculation, right? There's ways to not do that. It's a really good idea. Y'all should learn how to do that. And to have orgasm without ejaculation as a man is really one of like the unknown treasures of maleness that is there for people to discover. There's so many things in that for people. But for most men, ejaculation, orgasm, right? And there's possibly a baby there.
A baby.
The most careful birth control doesn't seem to stop that, right? Like life gets around it. Life is playing you. So like this thing that's absence only sex education is just ridiculous because it never happens, right? It's not reliable. You cannot rely on people to not have sex because you tell them not to.
Right.
This doesn't work. That is life energy living in us and through us, and we want to get to this place where we have this experience with another person and feel that liveliness, right? And that communication of energy and life and big, even the potential of that is really, right? It's a lot of energy. And life plays itself. It plays us. The sex plays us. Most people, because we don't take it on. We have no idea what's going on when we're youth. We're not sexually educated or attuned, and so, and so children happen. Life happens through it, and it's going to happen at the time and place it wants to happen, and we show up right when we're supposed to happen in this ecstatic experience, and that creates life. And everything is like that. Everything that happens, if we're in it, we're in, or it gets to this orgasmic place where every breath can be that, like, wow, this moment is created because it was supposed to be here, and I'm with it, right?
Yeah.
And getting on top of that, rather than the whole non-ejaculation thing, getting on top of that, being conscious and working with that. And not being played by it.
Yeah, playing instead of be played. You say that all the time, and I love it. And I feel like that's really the, kind of why we're doing healing stuff. Why do we want to heal trauma parts? Why do we want to develop consciousness and develop energy capacity? And one of the reasons for me is that when we have access to that energy from a conscious place, then we get to play more and be played less. We get to be at choice with how we're engaging with life, instead of just feeling like it's just this thing that's happening all the time, and it's so overwhelming that we either try to hold on super tight or we just fall apart and just let go and go flaccid.
Totally. And to bring back in this trauma piece, when this person I'm working with right now, where there's so much going on there that they can't feel it.
Yeah.
They can't. This is
numb
happening.
Kind of both ways.
So yeah, they went and experienced singing, which they love to do, and it didn't satisfy them. And they're like, I don't feel it because it's so much is happening in the thing that they can't feel in here, right?
Yeah.
And that's really hard. And what I told them is, do the thing. Go sing.
That's kind of where practice comes in.
Go talk to your mother. Go do the things that would attune you. You're not going to feel them. Yeah, that's true. That's where practice comes in. Because sometimes we just don't feel like it. And you just do it anyway. And even if you're not, the way I say it is, even if it doesn't work, it works.
Yeah.
Like I sit down with a trauma healing session, or, nonviolent communication, or whatever people are doing, even if it doesn't work, it works. Because the energy is going, even if your system is not registering how it's working. It will bring your energy back into it. And that brings us back into this feeling of like energy happens. And then the chemicals and the situations and everything happens with it, right? And energy work is that, where I'm going now to do. This is a secret. This is a very secret energy routine that I've learned. It's called banjo energy, right?
You changed it.
I did. I did Barney energy last time. It didn't go over well, so I'm changing to get the banjo energy.
Yeah,
and I'm going to use the power of banjo invested in me. To create an energy experience and an intention, and I'm going to put my hand on you and transfer banjo and anything, right? And
next thing you know, I want to make you dinner.
Yay! Yay! It works. But that intention will attune. Energy will follow if you believe in that. If you believe in banjo energy power, I believe in. You came to me and you paid me money. and energy got put into that system.
Mm-hmm.
Whoop.
Mm-hmm.
And then whatever chemicals are needed to happen will fill that. Now, that won't happen right away. Maybe it happens over time or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's so many ways in which this kind of energy attunement happens. But energy is happening. Life is happening. Energy follows along with it. And the experience is ecstatic and even orgasmic.
Mm-hmm.
When energy finds that place.
And again, it's this hand me that and take one side. All right, so we're just gonna find that beautiful spot again. It's like okay. And what do you call it? Satisfaction. And what are we all looking for? Everything that we're chasing, what is it?
It's that.
It's satisfaction.
Yeah.
Every spiritual teaching, I feel like it comes down to this.
Yeah.
This is the Tao. This is Michael Singer. This is Abraham Hicks. Right?
Yeah, even and this is we talked about this is desire.
Yeah. So
like, I want something and it creates.
I want to go to the ocean. Like, that's been in my field so big lately. I want it. I'm a little hungry, and so here we go. I'm at the ocean.
Yeah.
It's here. I'm right here.
There's the experience.
This is exact feeling.
Because you find that place of tension, and that's really good. And, it's funny because I'm paying attention to my desires, and I'm noticing that there's this want to feel this.
Yeah.
And maybe I should get my desire. Maybe I shouldn't. But my desires are kind of holy, right?
Yeah.
Because by following them, I'm going to find some place that creates this. And I can do the same exact thing with presence every moment.
Yes.
So it's this play between the two. Between like, okay, I want and I don't want. This is the conversation. I want and I'm here. I want and I'm here.
Yeah.
This is both of
and
those.
if you can get this, so now I have satisfaction. And it's actually connected to ocean because that's what got me here.
Yep.
And now I get to just have fun with, I wonder if life's going to bring me an opportunity to go to the ocean. Even if it's not, this is what I'm developing. And then you can take the concept of, life manifesting around energy. Like, here's our manifesting class. Develop your capacity for satisfaction with whatever is happening. And then it doesn't matter.
Then it doesn't matter.
Life
and you'll probably become resonant with it.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's this really interesting thing. It's that swing order practice of love it, have it, don't need it. Have it, don't want it.
Yeah. Like, I already have the ocean.
Because wanting is like,
yeah, you squeeze off the life force.
You squeeze it off,
clinging,
right? And having is like, oh, I have it. So you create the energy of the ocean in your system, and then you just double it, and you own that whole energy to the point where you're like, woo, there I am in this beautiful place. And, is it as satisfying as the actual ocean? Way more satisfying. Because it's just present. I don't need to spend the money. I don't need to do the things.
Sand in my toes.
Right. But in the way, like, it's really fun also to inhabit that energy with it too.
Yeah, because this is the beautiful thing that now can be manifest in your life in an endless variety.
Yeah.
It's so much better than novelty, right?
Yeah.
Novelty kind of takes you to the end of life force, and like it's almost like that addictive loop. Like, I need something new. I need something new. I need something new. This is like, okay, there's a current now that life is forming itself around, and it's this beautiful kaleidoscope of like, what next?
And it keeps you in the question. It keeps you in it keeps you here, right?
Yeah.
In this beautiful place where we want to be. Creation and surrender. Both happening in this energy, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to mention, coming back to this feeling, this energy of sex, just to kind of to mention this, this place where it's so much of this, actual stuff is said, like the metaphor, not metaphor that we're using here, right? is sexual.
Yeah, orgasmic living is a thing.
It's a thing, and a lot of the times we got separated from this experience because we were afraid of sex, or sex wasn't attuned or whatever. It's really interesting to step into a tantric container like conscious connections and feel people showing up with this big energy on it, right? People show up the first day and they're like, woo,
Yeah.
what's gonna happen? And it's so freaking wholesome, right?
It's
so
shockingly like simple,
shockingly
and just
simple and comfortable,
beautiful
for a lot of people. I mean, that's not everybody's medicine either, right? It's not everybody's medicine to step into a container like that, but this opportunity to feel that in a place where it's held and there's boundaries and there's safety, and you can find this, and that might be not engaging with anybody in that kind of container.
Yeah, it might be
and
watching. It might be saying no to the container altogether.
Right?
Like,
and,
I don't
just
want
to
to
feel
do my spiritual work there.
Your energy again pulls on people, and I've noticed this, right? Where I'll be with somewhere, people will experience her in different ways, and they'll be like, they'll come to me afterwards like, whoa, she's something. Like, wow, she's alive. Whoa. And that's really interesting. Like that one time we were dancing to the music, and the people were like, wow, it was so fun to watch you dance. And I'm standing right there like, I was dancing too. And they're like, yeah, but she stands out. I'm like, okay, this woman can hold a lot of tension and energy, and it displays it to people. It's really, really fun to experience you in that, and see you holding that container, by the way, too. That conscious connections container, and how you hold that. I've been so surprised at how much I've been engaged and enjoyed that, right?
Yeah.
It was a little bit of iffy thing for me in the beginning of our relationship, because I'm like, oh, okay, well, she does these things, I don't know, right?
Well, and
I was good with it at the same time. It was like, okay, question mark here.
Yeah, and part of the question mark, which I think is absolutely valid for any healing container, but particularly a sexual one, because there is so much trauma and shame and stuff, is it going to re-traumatize?
And it so often gets held poorly in spiritual community.
Yeah, is this going to re-traumatize? Is this just keeping people in that trauma identity space, or is there actually a room for people to be held and grow and be attuned? And that's the question is constantly in my field as I work with that container and create it, and it's lovely. It's a lovely, such loving space, and it's always surprising to people, because if you haven't experienced it, then your mind's gonna make a story about it, and chances are your story's wrong.
So wrong. Yeah, it's totally true. Even we've experienced that with just people around us that were like, well, I got that out of myself. I got that out of my systems when I was young. That wildness and that sexual exploration and whatever. I don't need to do that anymore. We're like, okay. Yeah. I don't think you understand what we're doing necessarily, right? Like it's really not about that at all.
Right.
It's really about coming into that practice of tension, and holding that, and finding those beautiful boundaries, and understanding, how you are in that situation, and holding that big energy in a mindful, compassionate space.
Yeah, and so much of it is this kind of self-experiment of how am I engaging with life? How am I engaging with myself? And then bringing that to your experience with someone else in this, like, here's how I'm going to engage with life that's living through you, that's living through me, instead of this, I need a person to play a role in my life. Like, you're it. I've had people do that to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to be it.
You're it. You're my soulmate.
I don't want to be that.
I mean, yes, and not the way you're thinking.
Right.
And all that is beautiful, and those energies that people feel with each other, and those stories, and all those are wonderful things. We. The value of heartbreak, right? The value of going into a relationship, the value of going into situations where you find people that you connect with, and then you find out they're not it.
Yeah.
Heartbreak is one of the most valuable things, and and sex, and hopefully holding this in safety and peace and whatever, and not some of the terrible experiences where people abuse each other,
right?
That kind of thing, right? But in a normal messy sexual life. people live in their 20s that we never did, and had to kind of like make up for that somehow, but those experiences are super valuable, super, super great. And I can speak to a lot of people coming out of that fundamentalist religion having those experiences and be like,
yeah,
whoa.
And you kind of have to, you don't get to skip the immature.
You don't get to skip some of the steps.
And if you have
it's really
some
good
attunement and
self.
Container and elder energy, it's less, there are less of those like lifelong consequences that kind of play you for the rest of your life.
You can shorten that learning with a great container. What great containers do is they shorten the learning experience with attunement, an example, and safety, and all those things where you get to feel all the big things, and you can lean into it even harder because of the safety and the boundary and all that's held. Super great.
Yeah, so I feel like, the nutshell of orgasmic living is, now that I have enough awareness to know that I'm conscious, and that there are 1,000 things right now in any moment that I can give my consciousness to. What do I want to make love to right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
How about this moment, this breath?
Yeah.
This look in the eyes, this, tension with an audience, this creation, why not just the whatever is happening right for you right now?
Yeah.
Right? And then play.
Yeah. So let's find our little satisfaction point again. Yeah. Right.
Pulling the band. Yeah.
The reality is that there are layers and layers and layers for most people of trauma built and calcified around this flow, this satisfaction, which is why we're chasing it. With food or drugs or sex or whatever, Dr. Pimple Popper. Because it's satisfying, right? Like, we love that word.
Yeah.
And so when you can't find this, just notice, what's it like to not be able to find satisfaction? What's it like, next level, to judge yourself for not being able to find satisfaction right now? And just notice. So this particular tension might not be available, but when you notice something, that tension's going to be created at some level, and the energy's going to move, and you're gradually going to sift through those layers if you can just notice what is. My stomach is tight
tension
because it feels like I'm judging myself for not being able to feel satisfied right now. I should be okay right now. And it's like, oh, notice. What's it like to feel like you should be satisfied?
It's creating a container with mindfulness.
Yeah.
And creating the meta experience that in itself holds a lot of tension, right? And so if you can create a meta experience and find this with it, then the trauma that doesn't give you access to the core of this will release.
It'll soften.
It'll soften.
The energy will move. And then you get to see where it goes.
Sometimes it takes a while to watch that. I mean, that's the whole thing of mindfulness. You watch it for a long time and you soften. You can shorten that with both the meta and the experience, right? So creating games and practice for yourself. Again, I told recently a client, everything is practice now. Until your field clears, everything is practice, and that might feel weighty, but it's better than running from it. Because if you run from it, it never will release you. The cool thing about practice is it always becomes easier because I'm taking it on, right? And then my system will adjust to that. But if I'm going, no, there's never the space to find the attunement, But if I'm like, okay, fuck it, I'm going to have to suffer anyway. I'm just going to lean into this as practice. Okay. okay.
Yeah, then you get to
now I
you get to actually feel
now I'm starting
something.
to feel something.
Well, once you start to feel something, then you get to notice it.
Yeah.
And then you get to, oh, well, what if? You know, we did that relationship course a couple months ago, and every single week, a couple hours before, something in me would activate. I'd
Like,
get a trauma part
yeah.
activated, and I would be in almost this full-on panic attack when we started, which
Mm-hmm.
wasn't normal for me in a teaching space. But every week, most weeks I would even presence it in the circle.
Yeah.
Panic attack again. It's funny because every week my mind created a different story around what it was.
Yeah.
And by the last week, I was like, oh, it was this. The whole time. It was Shakti.
It was like, woo.
It was just
okay.
my system was accessing more energy because life was moving through me in this creative process with the class.
Mm-hmm.
And my mind wanted to make a story out of it, and it took me 6 weeks to finally be like, oh, this is Shakti. Oh, this is actually yummy. But it's because I noticed it, that all those layers.
And it's kind of taken on that new thing, and it's kind of like with the intention of the course. There's a lot in it, There's some big scenes in that course. I think that we're trying to communicate, so it felt like pretty important. Yeah. And this, to sit as a teacher, this is what you're doing.
Yeah. This
is Socratic discussion often. This is creating that thing. In some classes, it's just not possible. This is what I found. I needed 4, maybe 5 students in a class to be in the game, to be holding themselves enough.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. If everybody was if I had to hold attention for everybody, it would feel put upon. Right. But if I could just have enough people in the class, pulling their own weight, pulling their stuff, really interested. Then it sucks the whole energy of the thing in.
Yeah.
And the attention in the classroom becomes different because they can't witness the conversation between me and the people that are interested without kind of being drawn into that conversation. That's why healers are healing. And so this experience where you're holding the tension and you're teaching the class, you're in this experience of I'm working with this thing that I'm working with, and that's the lesson. It doesn't matter what you say at that point.
Right.
Because it's going to feel pretty cool.
Yeah. So this one last thing that just popped in as I was taking notes, which is fun, is the key is that presence. It's that noticing. And so I want to pick apart the word attention in a really fun way. It's at.
At attention. At the right tension.
Yeah, it's like bringing presence. Like, what's the vibration here? What's the energy doing here? Just noticing.
Love it. At attention. That's really good. Okay, thank you for if you made it all the way through this conversation. We did twice. And we're happy that you joined us. I feel like this is such good stuff today. I'm really, really enjoying this. Whether or not anybody else is, it almost doesn't matter. Again, when you're holding this, it's just awesome. But we think this is rich. Be looking for not conscious connections. That's good too. Look for that. Conversations with life. We want to build a platform based on the conversation, and there's a Facebook group up. We're starting to do events, convocations, we're calling them. We're doing, there's going to be a solstice event that Soul and Spirit Wellness is running. We're doing a lot of cool stuff. Conscious Connections meetings are happening, Etsy temples are happening. So many beautiful experiences, and we want them to multiply. And we want your medicine, right? We want you to come into the conversation and find that place where you work with us in this place that feels really, really, really good. And we're not the boss of that. It really is a conversation. But we are doing a Mighty Networks group. And so, we're leading on this. We're hoping people will come in, add their medicine, add their conversation. We're going to create trainings within the community on how people can attune each other and how we can hold each other, both virtually and in person. I want it to, we want it to be this space of healing and growth and support and we know how to do it. We figured some things out and we want to offer them, and we want you to offer your magic and your medicine as well, even if that's just your presence. everything there is going to be that way. It's going to be, we're looking to build community. And will it happen? Will you join? I don't know. That's the conversation. I don't know, you know. And but it's there, and the idea feels rich and beautiful to us, and you know, we're looking forward to these experiences with you, virtually, in person. And we'll continue to do this podcast. I think next week we're going to do energy. Don't hold me to that, but I'm really feeling that one come in. So it's we gotta talk about that. Not discussed beforehand, but you know, whatever feels the most important and is the most pressing in the moment, and the energy we're gonna work with. And the telephone rings. So thank you all for being here. I wish you would have heard the first one too. Actually, I think this turned out great.
Yeah,
I liked it. We did good. We did pretty good at recapturing it. Right? This is a tribute to the best second half of a podcast in the world. If you don't know the reference, go look up Jack Black's greatest song. So have a beautiful, beautiful week, wherever, whenever you are.
a room
Mm-hmm.
for people to be held and grow and be attuned.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the question is constantly in my field as I work with that container and create it. And it's lovely.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lovely, such loving space. And it's always surprising to people because if you haven't experienced it, then your mind's going to make a story about it. And chances are your story's wrong.
So wrong. Yeah, it's totally true. Even we've experienced that with, just people around us that were like, well, I got that out of myself. I got that out of my systems when I was young, that wildness and that sexual exploration and whatever. I don't need to do that anymore. We're like, okay. Yeah, I don't think you understand what we're doing necessarily, right? Like, it's really not about that at all.
Right.
It's really about coming into that practice of tension and holding that and finding those beautiful boundaries and understanding, how you are in that situation, and holding that big energy in a mindful, compassionate space.
Yeah, and so much of it is this kind of self-experiment of how am I engaging with life? How am I engaging with myself? And then bringing that to your experience with someone else in this, like, here's how I'm going to engage with life that's living through you, that's living through me, instead of this, I need a person to play a role in my life. Like, you're it. People do that to me.
Yeah.
I don't want to be it.
You're it. You're my soulmate.
I don't want to be
that. I mean, yes, and not the way you're thinking.
Right.
And all that is beautiful, and those energies that people feel with each other, and those stories, and all those are wonderful things. The value of heartbreak, right? The value of going into a relationship, the value of going into situations where you find people that you connect with, and then you find out they're not it.
Yeah.
Heartbreak is one of the most valuable things, and and sex, and hopefully holding this in safety and peace and whatever, and not some of the terrible experiences where people abuse each other,
right?
That kind of thing, right? But in a normal messy sexual life. People live in their 20s that we never did, and had to kind of like make up for that somehow, But those experiences are super valuable, super, super great. And, I can speak to a lot of people coming out of that fundamentalist religion, having those experiences and be like, whoa.
And you kind of have to, you don't get to skip the immature.
You don't get to skip some of the steps.
And if you have
really
some attunement and container and elder energy, it's less, there are less of those like lifelong consequences that kind of play you for the rest of your life.
You can shorten that learning with a great container. What great containers do is they shorten the learning experience with attunement, an example, and safety, and all those things where you get to feel all the big things, and you can lean into it even harder because of the safety and the boundary and all that's held. Super great.
Yeah, so I feel like, the nutshell of orgasmic living is, now that I have enough awareness to know that I'm conscious, and that there are 1,000 things right now in any moment that I can give my consciousness to. What do I want to make love to right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
How about this moment, this breath?
Yeah.
This look in the eyes, this, tension with an audience, this creation, why not just the whatever is happening right for you right now?
Yeah.
Right? And then play.
Yeah, so let's find our little satisfaction point again. Yeah, right.
Pulling the band, yeah.
The reality is that there are layers and layers and layers for most people of trauma built and calcified around this flow, this satisfaction, which is why we're chasing it. With food or drugs or sex or whatever, Dr. Pimple Popper. Because it's satisfying, right? Like, we love that word. Yeah. And so when you can't find this, just notice. What's it like to not be able to find satisfaction? What's it like, okay, next level, to judge yourself for not being able to find satisfaction right now? And just notice. 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 So this particular tension might not be available, but when you notice something, there's that tension's going to be created at some level, and the energy's going to move, and you're gradually going to sift through those layers. If you can just notice what is. My stomach is tight
tension
because it feels like I'm judging myself for not being able to feel satisfied right now. I should be okay right now. And it's like, oh, notice. What's it like to feel like you should be satisfied?
It's creating a container with mindfulness.
Yeah.
And creating the meta experience that in itself holds a lot of tension, right? And so if you can create a meta experience and find this with it, then the trauma that doesn't give you access to the core of this will release.
It'll soften.
It'll soften.
The energy will move. And then you get to see where it goes.
Sometimes it takes a while to watch that. I mean, that's the whole thing of mindfulness. You watch it for a long time and you soften. You can shorten that with both the meta and the experience, right? So creating games and practice for yourself. Again, I told recently the client, everything is practice now. Until your field clears, everything is practice, and that might feel weighty, but it's better than running from it. Because if you run from it, it never will release you. The cool thing about practice is it always becomes easier because I'm taking it on, right? And then my system will adjust to that. But if I'm going, no, you know, there's never the space to find the attunement, you know? But if I'm like, okay, fuck it, I'm going to have to suffer anyway. I'm just going to lean into this as practice. Okay.
Yeah, then you get to actually feel
now I'm starting
something.
to feel something.
Well, once you start to feel something, then you get to notice it.
Yeah.
And then you get to, oh, well, what if? You know, we did that relationship course a couple months ago, and every single week, a couple hours before, something in me would activate. I'd
Like,
get a trauma part activated, and I
Mm-hmm.
would be in almost this full-on panic attack when we started, which wasn't normal for me in a teaching space. But every week, most weeks I would even presence it in the circle. Panic attack again. It's funny because every week my mind created a different story around what it was. And by the last week, I was like, oh, it was this. The whole time. It was Shakti.
It was like, woo.
It was just my system was accessing more energy because life was moving through me in this creative process with the class. And my mind wanted to make a story out of it, and it took me, 6 weeks to finally be like, oh, it's just Shakti. Oh, this is actually yummy. But it's because I noticed it, that all those layers.
And it's kind of taken on that new thing, and it's kind of like with the intention of the course. There's a lot in it, there's some big scenes in that course, I think, that we're trying to communicate, so it felt like pretty important. And this, to sit as a teacher, this is what you're doing.
Yeah.
This is Socratic discussion often. This is creating that thing. In some classes, it's just not possible. This is what I found. I needed 4, maybe 5 students in a class to be in the game, to be holding themselves enough.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. If everybody was if I had to hold attention for everybody, it would feel put upon. Right. But if I could just have enough people in the class, pulling their own weight, pulling their stuff, really interested. Then it sucks the whole energy of the thing in, and the attention in the classroom becomes different because they can't witness the conversation between me and the people that are interested without kind of being drawn into that conversation. That's why healers are healing. And so this experience where you're holding the tension and you're teaching the class, you're in this experience of I'm working with this thing that I'm working with, and that's the lesson. It doesn't matter what you say at that point.
Right.
Because it's going to feel pretty cool.
Yeah. So this one last thing that just popped in as I was taking notes, which is fun, is the key is that presence. It's that noticing. And so I want to pick apart the word attention in a really fun way. It's at.
At attention. At the right tension.
Yeah, it's like bringing presence. Like, what's the vibration here? What's the energy doing here? Just noticing.
Love it. At attention. That's really good. Okay, thank you for being, if you made it all the way through this conversation. We did twice. And we're happy that you joined us. I feel like this is such good stuff today. I'm really, really enjoying this. Whether or not anybody else is, it almost doesn't matter. Again, when you're holding this, it's just awesome. But we think this is rich. Be looking for not conscious connections. That's good too. Look for that. Conversations with Life. We want to build a platform based on the conversation, and there's a Facebook group up. We're starting to do events, convocations, we're calling them. We're doing, there's going to be a solstice event that Soul and Spirit Wellness is running. We're doing a lot of cool stuff. Conscious Connections meetings are happening, Etsy temples are happening. So many beautiful experiences, and we want them to multiply. And we want your medicine, right? We want you to come into the conversation and find that place where you work with us in this place that feels really, really, really good. And we're not the boss of that. It really is a conversation. But we are doing a Mighty Networks group. And so, we're leading on this. We're hoping people will come in, add their medicine, add their conversation. We're going to create trainings within the community on how people can attune each other and how we can hold each other, both virtually and in person. I want it to, we want it to be this space of healing and growth and support and we know how to do it. We figured some things out and we want to offer them, and we want you to offer your magic and your medicine as well, even if that's just your presence. Everything there is going to be that way. It's going to be, we're looking to build community. And will it happen? Will you join? I don't know. That's the conversation. I don't know, and but it's there, and the idea feels rich and beautiful to us, and we're looking forward to these experiences with you, virtually, in person, and we'll continue to do this podcast. I think next week we're gonna do energy. Don't hold me to that, but I'm really feeling that one come in. So it's just we gotta talk about that. Not discussed beforehand, but whatever feels the most important and is the most pressing in the moment, and the energy we're gonna work with. And the telephone rings. So thank you all for being here. I wish you would have heard the first one too. Actually, I think this turned out great.
Yeah,
I liked it.
We did a pretty good job.
We did pretty good at recapturing it, right? This is a tribute to the best second half of a podcast in the world. If you don't know the reference, go look up Jack Black's greatest song in the world. So have a beautiful, beautiful week and a day, and wherever and whenever you are, may it be ecstatic.